Welcome back to another episode of Coats in Conversation. I'm your host, Kendrique Coats. Before we get started in today's episode, be sure to go out and like and subscribe to Coats in Conversation on YouTube. You can also follow Coats in Conversation on Instagram. If you are listening on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening to the podcast at, be sure to share it with somebody who may benefit from these podcast episodes. And be sure to give that 5-star review. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Let us know if there are any topics that you would like us to dive deeper into. Got my longtime friend Lawrence Harden today, and we get into a great conversation about his journey of coaching athletes nowadays. Lawrence is a former collegiate track and field athlete. He is now a high school track and field coach, and he is currently opening up his new sports performance business. So we get into the nitty-gritty of coaching athletes nowadays, dealing with parents and athlete mental health. And then towards the end of the episode, we get into his journey opening up his new sports performance business. I hope you enjoy this conversation. And if you like this conversation, be sure to share it with somebody who may benefit from this conversation.
Perfect.
Lawrence Harden, how you doing today?
Doing awesome, man. Appreciate you.
Man, the storm. So before we actually started recording this episode, y'all, my power went out. There's a storm going through my area, and it literally, I'm in the tropical area of the United States, so it's literally raining or storming every single day. So, Lawrence, I appreciate you being patient with that small little delay. Sometimes when I have guests on, one of the first things I like to do is I like to do a mental health check-in. So where are you at physically, mentally, and spiritually today?
Uh, I honestly, man, I'm one of those people that I'm pretty level headed on every front. No matter what's going on in my life, I've never really been that person that have like my emotions go up and down, except for in sports. You know what I mean? Is when I'm competing, that's when you see my emotions fluctuate. Whether or not you know what I mean. If I'm doing, I don't go down. If I'm going up, I'm going up. Be careful, I'm coming at you. But but most of the time, man, I'm pretty even kill. My mental stability is pretty solid. I've done enough reading and research on it. Not to mention my just level headedness just genetically, or what I would say inherently, from that I get from my parents or from my father and from my grandfathers and so on and so forth. But I'm pretty level headed all the time, and I enjoy that part because it makes life a lot easier.
That's definitely, with all the different things going on in today's world and all of these distractions, just being able to, like you said, keep that level head and just not get too high or too low on on emotions um, is so important in today's
Yeah,
society because there's things all around us that could easily trigger
helps.
us.
It helps a lot. Yeah.
So when I initially reached out to you about doing a podcast, we probably could have recorded the first conversation that we had a few weeks ago because that was, I think we talked for like an hour and a half, and I'm like, dang, we should have recorded that one. But I wanted to bring you on because of, one, your background as being a former athlete and now in the coaching space. And I was kind of telling you a little bit about what I'm doing as far as having these conversations regarding mental health with athletes, coaches, and other individuals within their given field. So, to kick things off today, I know you've been in the high school coaching game for a while now, and we all know that mental health is a big deal, especially for young athletes. How do you approach fostering a positive mental attitude in your athletes, and what strategies have you found most effective in helping them deal with pressure of performance?
Uh, I think what resonates with my athletes mostly is that uh, the way that my attitude comes off to them, or how I'm treating them, or what I'm doing when it comes to them, what they see me doing. Uh, and I have this philosophy, and I heard this story from man, I cannot remember exactly where I heard this story from, but it's the story. Have you ever heard of the story of the old man and of the farmer and his son?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so there's a story about a farmer and his son, and I'll try to make this as brief as I possibly can. But there's a story about a farmer and his son, or a herder and his son, and it goes a little bit something like that. I might botch it up a little bit, but it goes a little bit of something like this. So the farmer, they have a farm. They live in a small little village. He has a son. His son helps him break horses, and one day, one of his horses took off, ran away. Son comes crying to his dad and says, "Hey, Dad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I lost the horse. The horse got out of the pen and he ran away. He's gone. He's gone. This is horrible. It's horrible." And the farmer says, "Maybe." Son goes, "Maybe. What do you mean?" Like, okay, all right, maybe. All right, cool. Next thing you know, the horse comes back with. I think the story goes along, but the horse comes back with 5 to 7 more horses. So now they lost one, but now they got back 5 to 7 more horses. Now kid comes back to his dad. "Hey, dad, guess what? The horses just came back, and it came back with more. It came back with more horses. We got so many horses now." And the father does it again. He says, "Maybe." He's like, this is so great. This is so awesome. Maybe. Uh, and then things go on into the story. Story goes on to say that at some point the kid breaks his arm because he was trying to break the horse in. Uh, Father again says maybe. The After that, the army are recruiting young kids at fighting age. They come in and ask for his son to go off to war to recruit him for war. His son's got a broken arm, so obviously he can't go. So the villagers say, "That's so awesome, that's so great." Again, he's just saying maybe the entire time. And the moral of the story goes to is that no matter what situation you're dealing with or going through, you never know what the outcome might be. So instead of being so up and down with your emotions, it's better to just stay level headed and make decisions based off of the situation that you have at hand, or make do with what you have right in front of you. And so I truly go into my training and my coaching like that. So when I do have situations where I know that the athletes are watching me and or they want some sort of guidance, they're going through some things. For the most part, I always let them know, like, "Hey, look, that's just a today problem. You're an athlete. You have so many things going ahead of you in the future that you have no clue what's gonna happen for you or what it's gonna do for you. Just focus on making great decisions today and right now." And so that's basically the approach that I have to be able to give them a positive mindset. Most of the time is just simply enough. Don't dwell on things because you never really know what the outcome might be. And if you have this "woe is me" mindset, you'll reserve yourself and you won't allow yourself to open up and be the light that you can possibly be. And so that's pretty much where I come with when I come where I come at with my positive motivation for my athletes is just continuously do the things that you need to do right now today, and it will turn into something great for you in the end.
I like that approach because there's also an element of kind of the athlete having his or her own autonomy and
Yeah.
thinking. And, I always think about it from the standpoint, and I think you mentioned it as far as coaches are a model for the athletes. And so, as a coach, if emotions are high all the time, then, that can sometimes create some type of anxiety around an athlete. And then if emotions are too low, the athlete's like, "Well, coach, do you care about me? Are you
I
excited
believe
about what
me.
I'm doing?"
Yep.
Right, right. And so from your experiences, have you seen athletes that have had a tendency to be a little bit more on the anxious side? And if so, are there things that you do to kind of bring that athlete back down to kind of more balanced emotions?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think it goes to what they experience when they're either at home or in the environment that they're mostly usually around. Uh, if they seem to be a lot more antsy and anxious, it's most likely because they either have some sort of something to prove, or they don't trust the process of whatever they're doing or going through. Uh, and so a lot of the times they're anxious because they want to do great things. And so when it comes down to that person that's anxious that wants to do great things, I'm always telling that person like, "Hey, look, first of all, you're always great. Put that in your mind. You are always great. You are always enough. You are always going to do what you can possibly do. If this mindset means that you care and you're going to give your best effort, so allow that to happen. But the second thing is when they're in that mindset, you have to almost like narrow their aim to be more so targeted on what they're doing at that moment, because that emotion is an outward emotion. It's a buckshot emotion. It can go anywhere. If they're having a bad day, it's going to go down that path. If they're having a great day, it's going to go down that path. And the more and more and more I instill in them that you are great already, just do this right here as great as you can do, a lot of the times it fixes themselves. And then when I have an athlete that doesn't really get that concept or doesn't necessarily buy into that thought process, it takes a little bit more time, but I also have the patience to allow that time frame to happen. And if it doesn't happen with me, my only hope is that I just pray for that athlete to be able to experience other coaches or other people in their lives that will also direct them into that mindset of, hey, you're great already. Just keep doing great things right now. And don't worry about the things that might happen or might not happen. Can't really worry about those things.
Kind of like manifesting or cultivating a space where the athlete has that space to fail. And I think in a previous episode that I had maybe a few months ago with another coach who's in your area, he was kind of saying it's okay to fail. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes with athletes, even, my previous experience with coaching athletes, when you, at least my experience is when you allow an athlete to fail and not get too emotional about his or her failure, the athlete's like, "Wait, so you're not mad at me, coach?" I'm like, "No." Like, and it being track and field at the beginning of the year, athletes always come in February, March, and they're wanting to run peak times. I'm like, "Yo, this is not going to work. We are trying to build you up to, April and May." And then once they sense that, they're like, "Oh, okay." And kind of like what you said, trusting that process and allowing them to fail, go back to practice, figure out what it is that, they need to do. Which that brings me to my next question, because it is one of those things to where coaching nowadays, it looks a little bit different than it did when you and I were, coming up
Yeah.
and playing sports to where it's like what are water breaks? We didn't have water breaks, we and so, you know, being in a different um day and age with athletes and sports and sports performance, how do you balance pushing athletes to their limits while also helping them develop as individuals? And the reason I ask that as well is because it's so easy to, you know, be too hard on an athlete as an athlete and them not come back. And so I'm curious to know, like, how do you balance that while also helping them develop as individuals?
Man, yeah, that one is tough. When you because that one goes back generations. When you have coaches who, when we were raised, when we were growing up, we had coaches who had been into the military, and there's obviously coaches who have been in the military now, but a lot more militant coaches were around, uh, and that was the era of no pain, no gain. That was the era of suck it up, rub some dirt in it, just get back out there, and you didn't have other outlets to be able to do your sports. There wasn't always the AAUs. There wasn't always the other clubs going on, and so if you wanted to play that sport, that was who you had to deal with. And now it's a lot different. Now these kids have way more options. And that's a great thing, I think. I think it's an awesome thing because it makes coaches better now. Now I have to be better as a coach. Now I have to understand. Now I have to actually work with this kid instead of just saying, get up, wipe it off, get back in there. Now I have to go, hey, you're all right. Hey, I need you here though. Are you mentally okay? Let's get back into it. And so a lot of the times is I'm checking in with them for the most part. But I do have a philosophy when it comes down to working with athletes who are struggling or whatnot, and that is checking in with them constantly and making sure that when I'm checking into with them, that I'm also listening to them. And most of the time, realistically, there's a time and a place for the hard coach. If you're an athlete and it's at the end of the season and they're just a little bit unsure about themselves because they finally see the competition that they have to run up against or go against, at that point it's like, look, no, dude, you are who you are. We've built you to this moment. You are who you are. You are king in this room right now. This is where you're standing at. This is where I expect you to be at the end of the day. And I want you to go out there and give everything. There's time for that coach to come out, and then there's also time like practices when they're like, man, coach, my shin splints are killing me today. There's times for that coach to come out and be like, are you all right? You think you'll be able to do this or no? I don't need you to hurt yourself today. I don't need you to push that hard today. I need you to push hard, but I need you to push hard in a way that you can push hard. So if that means getting on the bike and pushing hard on the bike, that's what we're going to do today. But I don't need you to get work. I don't need you to run on the track and push as hard as you can on the track. It's not going to help us in the long run. I'm future focused. I'm focused on conference. I'm focusing on sectionals and I'm focused on state. I don't care about this practice today. We'll come back at it. You still will be fast tomorrow. And so I think the philosophy behind it has to be that there's always a future for you. You can't always be who you want to be today. Give me who you are today. And that's mostly what I'm trying to what I'm trying to get my athletes to understand as far as my philosophy goes with when it comes down to their growth and their personal growth and how what I expect from them is give me what you got today, and tomorrow is the future is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for you to stay healthy today. That's what I need.
And I could imagine where, as an athlete in today's world where, there's social media and you see, you know, athlete A, B, C, and it almost appears that they've just skipped this whole process and they're just Usain Bolt. It's like, whoa, no, 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 no. Usain he had years of work that he had to put in. How do you see it play out with parents? Because I know parents are always, well, why isn't little Johnny running 0.25 seconds faster? It's like, so what have your experiences been working with parents who may have this
I
anxiety about little Johnny or little Susie's performance, and what kind of messages are you or information are you giving the parents?
So I just had a parent that came to me this last season when I was coaching track and field, and this is I think this is his kid's first, maybe second track meet he had ever gone to. He was a freshman with me. I had seen him run in middle school. I knew who he was. I knew his name. I didn't know who he was. I knew his name, and so and granted, for clarification, when the season starts, I've got about like 58 kids. We've got about 2 or 3 weeks prior to our first meet you know what I mean? Before the first meet, I get about 2 or 3 weeks with them. Uh, Most of the time, I'm I'm basically waiting for kids to drop off because some kids just won't make it. They're there for different reasons. They don't think that they'll see the competition, and some of them won't want to compete anymore. Uh, so when it comes down to freshmen, I'm learning their names last. Uh, So having 58 kids, 50, 60 kids into the program, you don't know everybody's name, you don't know everybody's capabilities. So as at some point I'm just looking down the list of names and saying, okay, you said you want to be a sprinter, I'm gonna put you in this event. You say you want to be a thrower, I'm gonna put you in this event. And I'm just going down the list. So I'm at this meet with these kids, and this is, I think it's his first or second meet that he had ever been in. I think it was his first meet that he was actually running the 100 in. Obviously, the parents know who their kid is. So the parents came and they said, "Hey, why isn't my son running? Why didn't my son run in the last meet?" And I was like, well, truthfully be told, the last meet was a varsity meet. The second meet that we had was a freshman meet. And so I was like, well, that was a varsity meet, first and foremost. And secondly, I don't know your son yet. It's week 3 or something like that. I don't know him yet. And so she's explaining to me who her son is and how fast he is. And that's all fine and dandy. That's great. But until I see the numbers, I can't really go off of every kid out there thinks that they're fast. Every parent in the stands thinks that their kid is fast. I would love to see your kid be the best athlete in the program. That would be awesome. As a freshman, great. But ultimately, I have to wait and see. And so this is my chance to wait and see. So what I'm doing right now, her son was about to run at the moment, and so what I'm doing right now is I'm sitting down here, my top stopwatch. They've got the FAT timing system. We're gonna watch and see what happens. Sure enough, her kid wins. He's fast. He is the fastest. He is the fastest freshman on the team that last year, uh, and he's potentially going to be the fastest varsity athlete on the team after this season is over with. And so, yeah, you're right. But what happens is that when I'm talking to parents about their kids and how athletically gifted their kids are, I'm from show me. This is track and field.
Right.
This isn't a game of chance. This isn't betting. You can't fool the numbers. I can't. Even my thumb is not better than that timing system over there. As much as I can press this thing as fast as the next guy, but I'm still not as good as that timing system. So what I mostly tell parents is that if your son or your daughter is who you say that they are, keep treating them that way, because when it comes down to it, that's going to be the kid that stays in the program and stays focused and dialed into the program. It's the kids whose parents who don't focus, who don't think that their kid is who they are, or don't give them that positive influence and say, hey, no, you are who you are. Keep running fast, keep doing this, show the coach who you are. It's those parents who don't do that the kids end up not following all the way through, or they do all the talking but never show me anything. And so when it comes down to the parents like that, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it because I know now that I can literally tell your son to go do any workout and he's going to want to do it because I have the backing of his parents. And so whether or not the parent likes me or not, and I've had parents who don't like me just because of my coaching style. Hey, if your son's not showing up to practice, I'm not putting him in the meet. I'm not gonna subject him to getting injured, nor am I going to subject some other kid or take away some other kid's opportunity because your son's not showing up or because your daughter's not showing up. They show up, they compete, they're going to be in the meet. If they don't show up, they don't compete, then their chances of running are going to be a little bit more slimmer. I'm trying to get everybody in as much as I can, but yeah, that's where it comes down to. So yeah, so that's how I deal with the parents.
The accountability piece of that, you start seeing the extension of the athlete's family, and at least in my experiences, to where you hold somebody accountable, and then the parents are calling like, "Hey, why isn't he there?" Well, okay, I'm looking at my schedule. He missed this, or she missed this. So I'm just supposed to automatically put your son or daughter in an event because they miss that. That doesn't work in the real world. You start missing work and you get fired.
Right?
But but the other thing you said, you're from the you're in the camp of the show me camp.
Yep.
And that is one reason why I appreciate track and field so much, because
Man.
in football, basketball, volleyball, those sports, you can kind of put athletes in there and you can blend them into your system. And it's like,
There's a
okay,
stat for everybody in that.
exactly, and they pass the eye test a lot easier in track and field. If you run a 21-second 200 FAT, so automatic,
Yep.
it's a legitimate 21 seconds. You can't lie about the times in track and field, and so that's the other beautiful thing about track and field, which I am a fan of. All athletes should be involved in it if they can, because one, you're working on speed development, but also you can't lie about the time.
Yeah. You
You
can't
can't lie
talk
about the time.
yourself into a win.
You really can't. You really can't. But, you know, and the other piece that you added in there is you also have a team. So if you are allowing one specific Johnny or Susie to miss practice or not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then just put them in a meet or put them in an event, it's like, how is that going to affect the overall morale of the team? It's like, wait, hold on, this person gets this, and this opportunity, and they don't show up for practice. Oh, well, I'm a slack off too. And so
Yep.
that's where it's so important as a coach. And this kind of goes into your holistic view and holistic approach to coaching is it starts with the coach, and the coach creates the culture. And if the coach doesn't create the culture, then
Culture
uh,
creates itself and then it's chaos.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And the other piece that I'll add in that as well is just from the standpoint of if a parent is not giving their son or daughter the validation that they deserve or they need, and we talk about it in the mental health space that I'm in of marriage and family therapy. If you are not nurturing a child, that
Mm.
child is significantly impacted by that. And so, as a coach, being in your space, not being able or not being the coach that is like, hey, keep on going, give me all you got today. I just need you today.
Mhm.
That goes so far. So with your holistic approach with how you talk to athletes, how you coach athletes, and it is different as far as you got old school coaching, you got more new school coaching. So have you seen coaches around you alter how they've
Yeah.
addressed you or interacted with you because your coaching style is not the norm, is at least having a more holistic and more athlete centric environment versus some coaches have my way or the highway type of.
The coaches that have been inside of my program, or at least in the programs that I have been a part of, the programs that I've been a part of, we focused on psychology. We focused on understanding us, understanding the environment around us, understanding the strength training room, understanding the track, understanding the athlete. We have to understand all of those different variables. The coaches that I noticed that have not gone through through those psychology of understanding not only themselves but the athlete as well. And I've got stories for days on this. Coaches who have expressed dislike or expressed that the athlete wasn't working as hard. One situation happened to where a coach came up to me and he said this particular athlete was a horrible athlete. They didn't work hard. They didn't have the work ethic that they thought that coach thought that they were supposed to have. They were that you know what I mean, all kinds of things. And when I didn't work with that athlete yet. When I over time, I was going around checking on different coaches in the area and what they were doing. I was just kind of like doing some research in the area of track. Well, I found this athlete at one of the other coaches' camps. I said, "Hey, how often does this kid come?" "Hey, he comes every single day. He's the captain of the team." "He's the captain of the team, huh? Okay, all right." Come to find out, same thing when he was what was my athlete at this now. Same thing. He was the captain of the team. He didn't talk much. He didn't lead through his voice. He didn't lead by saying, "Hey, come on, guys, let's do this." He led by doing it. He led by going out and doing it. Thing was, he didn't like the other sport. He wasn't a fan of the other sport. He did it because he was being told to do it. And so now You have coaches who don't see those things. They don't they what I would say is you open your mouth before you have all the information. Don't go opening your mouth until you know this athlete. I'm not going to go try to help an athlete or tell an athlete what they should or shouldn't be doing until they've sat down in a couple of sessions with me and worked with me a little bit and I know them now. When I know them, when I've asked my questions and I figure out who that athlete is, now I have a way better understanding of where they're coming from. Now I have a way better understanding. Oh, okay, yeah, great. You don't like that sport. Awesome. Great. What sport do you like? You do this sport. That's the sport that, so you're doing this to get better for that or to get ready for that. Got it. So you don't want to go all out on this sport because you don't want to get hurt in this sport. Got it. Okay. I see where you're coming from. Cool. I know now that when you're playing this sport, though, is it okay that you understand that when you're playing this sport, that I don't rely on you as much as I want to? I want you to be able to, I want to be able to rely on you, but I can't now, knowing that you're not into this sport as much. But when it comes down to this sport, just know I'm looking for you to show out. I'm looking for you to be that guy that you say that you are. And so coaches who I notice who have not gone through those, I would say, who have not gone through those educational or knowledge or educational pieces of their profession tend to lose track of that. They tend to think that my way is supposed to be what you want. What I want should be what you want. And that's just not the case. It's just not realistic. It's just not the reality. The kid's not into it. You got to figure out what the kid is into. When you figure out what the kid is into, you lean into that. That's what's going to make them enjoy what you're doing a lot more, is because they know that you have, for instance, right now, when it comes down to my distance guys, realistically, they don't like the distance. I don't. My distance team right now doesn't really like distance that much. They're more so interested in other sports. So when I'm talking to them about track, I'm saying, hey, this will be great for you, but this is going to help you in this sport way more. The soccer, when soccer comes around, you're going to be able to run laps around those kids. You just keep doing this very, very well. Laps around those kids when it comes down to the soccer season. That's how you approach it. That's how you get that kid to be able to be on your side, but not only on your side, but to be ready when it comes down to the sport that they want to play.
I like what you say that as far as just having that conversation of knowing and understanding why the athlete is actually there, and then being able to kind of adapt your coaching style and your plans around that athlete, knowing that track and field or cross country isn't his or her primary sport. I
Hmm.
think that there's so much beauty in that because there are so many coaches that get all of these athletes onto their team and are frustrated because this athlete's not doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, coach, this is just something that they're doing in the meantime before soccer comes around or football comes around. And that doesn't mean that an athlete can show up and just go through the motions because again, going back to our example earlier, you show up to a job and or you don't show up to a job, you get fired. If you
Hmm.
show up to practice and you don't work, hey, sorry, son, but you
I
can't
need
you can't
I
be on
need
the
that
team.
uniform.
It's
You
plain and
see?
simple, cut and dry. But I like the fact that you have this approach that is athlete centric. And I resonate with that because even in my past, when I was coaching athletes, that is literally what I did. I had girls come up to practice and they're like, Coach, we don't like this workout. We don't want to do this. And I was like, well, why not? They're like, because X, Y, and Z. In my head, I'm like, okay, I need to adjust to them rather
Hmm.
than forcing them to do this thing. Because if I lose them today, I lose them for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And a lot of coaches don't understand that. And so before I ask the next question, there's another resource, for coaches that are listening or haven't, some coaches are like, well, what do we do? How do we learn this information? One of the books, and I think we've talked about it in the past, Brett Bartholomew's Conscious
Yeah.
Coaching.
I was gonna say I was just about to go grab
Yeah,
it.
that book is fire. And what's crazy is it doesn't even just apply to sports. It applies to life. If you are a leader of something, every leader should read this book, Conscious Coaching by Brett Bartholomew. I'm telling you, it gives you so many different scenarios or personality types or archetypes in that book. Um,
I was literally about to walk over there and go grab the book right now. It's sitting right here and looking at me. That book, man, I tell you what, and even deeper, I've read past that book. The research that book is designed from, I've read past that, and it's not so. So if you're that person that's like archetypes, I'm not going to call these athletes different names and archetypes. It go past that. Understand where each athlete is coming from, and you have to do the research prior to the session. You have to do the research prior to the seasoning opening, because until you know the athlete, you don't know what they're into, and you can't, because if you address it, if you take that same workout with those two different athletes, a track and field athlete and let's say for the sake of the argument, basketball athlete, you take the same workout though, and you just say, "Hey, look. I know track and field's not your sport, but when you're playing basketball and it's defensive time and the ball's going down back and down the court and nobody's called a timeout, there is no break in between. By the time that ball's made 3 or 4 trips down the court, guess who's the only person that's going to be running up and down the court? You. Keep that same energy as if you're on the basketball court. I get it. You don't like running 800s. Cool. Imagine that basketball's running up and down the court 3 trips in a row. That's about as long as the distance as an 800 if you're nonstop moving, going from offense to defense to offense to defense to offense to defense. You don't think after that 2 minutes of back and forth, that's a 2 minute 800-meter dash, 800-meter run. Take that same energy and put it onto the track, and just imagine you have a basketball in your hand. I don't care you run it fast or slow. Imagine you have a basketball in your hand and just get better at doing it. That's all I'm asking. Just get better at doing it. If you immediately meet them with that conversation prior to them even starting the workout, you'll get a better outcome out of that athlete right away, rather than waiting for them to bring that argument to you and then you're trying to justify it off the fly. It looks a lot more cleaner when you justify it right away.
Facts, 100%. Justify it at the beginning. And
Mhm.
and would you say, in your experiences, is there a difference between, um, as far as like clarity in how you're giving the messages to each individual athlete?
Oh yeah, and I subscribe to this theory when I'm strength training, is that before the session I give you everything that we're going to do. I want you to know the expectations that I have for each individual, not just my expectations, for everybody, for each individual. Hey, I know you're dealing with this knee injury right now. All I expect you to be able to do is give me whatever your need can give me today. I know that you got a game coming up tomorrow, or a tournament coming up this weekend. Your shoulder's going to be used a lot when you're playing volleyball or softball or baseball. I understand your shoulder's going to go through a lot. Instead of working on your shoulder today, let's just activate the muscles in the shoulder today, and then we'll worry about the legs and all that other stuff, and we'll limit your rate. We'll limit your weight. We'll limit your reps. We'll limit your time under tension. When you have that approach where you're telling them what the expectation of the workout is, and then you're saying, but your expectation is here. This is where the workout's going to be at. This is where I want you to be at, here or here. I don't need you to be here. I need you to be where you need to be at, so that when you go play your other sports or when you go play your other activities, I get you get what you want out of it. I get what I want out of it. And me, I just want you to be able to come back next week and feel confident that you just hit a home run, or that you threw a no hitter because your shoulder's not killing you. Have that mindset of, before anything starts, I give you my expectations. I tell you the steps that we're going to take to get there. And then I find what you need to get to that point or past that point. And so that's kind of the way I approach it and handle it.
I like that. I like that. And, one thing that has always fascinated me is how the physical and the cognitive performance is also often dependent on the athlete's overall mental well-being. As a coach, you're uniquely positioned to influence both. So can you share some stories or experiences where you've seen an athlete's mental resiliency directly impact their athletic performance?
Yeah, I mean, pressure makes diamonds, and you have to understand that pressure, stress that you put on an athlete is going to do one of two things, if or three things, one of three things. If you put too much pressure on the athlete, athlete's going to crumble underneath it. They're not going to be able to withstand it. If you don't put enough pressure on the athlete, they'll get really, really content and they'll think that they are the best thing in the world. That's that athlete that's a big fish in a small pond. You're not putting enough stress on them. They're not seeing the stress in competition. What you want is that perfect amount of stress of that they succeed, but they have to work really, really, really hard to succeed to the point to where they question themselves on whether they can succeed. And then they're trusting you as you saying, you will do this, you will succeed. I believe in you, I trust you. You have to trust yourself. Go do it. And then they complete it and they achieve it. One of my 2 years, I've been working with this athlete for 2 years, and he knows who he is. I'm not gonna say his name, but he knows who he is. When he sees this, he'll for sure see this. Uh, but he had a spinal injury 2 years ago. So, or 3 years ago, maybe right before COVID. He had a spinal injury right before COVID. Lucky for him, he had it in before COVID. He spent that entire COVID year that he wasn't able to compete in physical therapy and doing some things to help him get back to where he was supposed. He was a pole vaulter, so obviously jumping up and then landing from 13 feet in the air is not ideal when you have a neck injury or when you have a spine injury. And so he was one of those athletes again that coaches never really believed in. Always thought that he thought that he was bigger than himself. He thought that he was the man, or and he didn't work as hard. And watching him work for 2 years consecutive, 2 years straight, nonstop, from the time track and field season started till the time that he went off to his college of choice, nonstop he worked. Even to this moment, he's doing programs and working out. I just saw a notification that he's doing his workout. Okay. So knowing that you can come back from a spine injury to where you had to relearn how to walk, to a college, a D1 university giving you a scholarship or giving you the opportunity to come in and compete at the D1 level, like, to me, if that person can do that, anybody can do it. You just have to have the right pressure and the right motivation. For him, his parents were completely invested into his career in sports. For him, he made their his parents made sure that he slept at night. They made sure that he had food to that was healthy food to eat. They made sure that all the because obviously going through a spine injury, you kind of learn some of these things along the way as well. You got to have the right nutrition, otherwise it won't heal properly. But having that community around him is what allowed him to push through all the barriers that he had to push through. And so that's why I say pressure makes diamonds. Just the right amount of pressure can make a diamond shine. If you don't pressure your kids to doing the things that they should be capable of doing or they are capable of doing, then they just won't do it. If you pressure them too much, you'll break them down and they just won't do it. You have to give them that just enough, just enough, just enough. And then when they start to question themselves, hey, look up, get your head up, get your eyes up. Let's go. Come on. I know you can do it. I'm putting my stake in the ground. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go to the other side of the step. I'm gonna go up the step because I know that you're gonna get here when you get done with this. Let's go. Get over that hurdle. Get over that. Get over that bar. Let's get it. And sure enough, when you let go of the reins and you let them take their own faith, to take their own steps, they'll for sure take it if they have it in them. And if they don't, that's okay. Pat them on their back, talk to them a little bit. Hey, tomorrow's another day. We're gonna go that. You're gonna come back to this tomorrow, and we're gonna compete again. And if you always have that mindset, if you always continuously push those boundaries, you'll you will see that the right amount of pressure makes diamonds.
So there's a level of caring and pushing the athlete, which, that can go from uh, an athlete coming from a two-parent household and, upper middle class, high class, to an athlete, maybe two parents, maybe one parent in the household, or maybe no parent really in the household, low income. This method and this approach can work for both kids because just showing that you care, consistently caring for an athlete, showing support, showing encouragement, but more importantly, showing that they matter
Mhm.
is can be the difference maker in a uh, sports season. So I'm glad and I'm encouraged that you have that type of approach. And are there specific things that you do or specific information that you give to parents or athletes to help nurture that connection between the mind and body?
Yeah, I have another philosophy I would call it is everybody's got to do their job. Every coach has to make sure that they're doing their job. Uh, every you know what I mean. Every person that touches that kid or comes into that kid's life has to have their job and only their job in mind. So I'll break it down to you like this. Before I go to parents, I'll break it down to you like this. So I'm a strength and conditioning coach, mostly most hours of the day. When I'm working with my athletes have about like roughly around like 3 to 4 coaches that they work with. The ones who are injured have about 5 to 6. Uh, So let's say, for instance, the athlete that's injured, doctor, physical therapist, me, sports coach, skills coach. Think about like sports coach as being like the head volleyball coach or the head softball coach or the head baseball coach. Skills coach, think about the throws coach. Think about the hitting coach for golfers. Think about you know what I mean, those coaches, those ones that have a specific job. The think about track and field, the sprint coach. Uh and then they have the parent. Okay. The doctor's job is to keep the athlete contained after an injury. Their job is to, when the athlete gets injured, they give them the right amount of prescribed medicine needed to recover as fast as possible. The physical therapist is designed there to be after the doctor or before the doctor to make sure that that athlete is rehabbing any injury that they might have or any overuse injury that they might get. The strength coach is designed to strengthen that athlete as much as they possibly can within the parameters of the other two doctors. Okay, these two are doctors. This is not a doctor. I'm there to make sure that that athlete gets as strong as they possibly can within the parameters that I get from these two guys here or girls here. Then we have the sports coach. Your job is designed to give that athlete as much knowledge and information about the play style or the skill sets that they need to be able to be in your program. Okay. I take what you're doing in your program and try to make sure that the athlete is ready to go for your program. These other two guys here, they still have that president over the top. This is what you can do with this athlete. If you're not listening to these two guys, you're gonna hurt that athlete. If I'm not listening to you, I'm not going to get that athlete ready to go. And imagine a distance runner, and I'm over here telling the distance guy to go. You got to get you got to get bigger. You got to go ahead and lift as much weight as you possibly can. You got to put that time under tension. We need hypertrophy. We need bulkiness. And then all of a sudden, that athlete turns from a 4 minute mile runner to a 7 minute mile runner because they just can't do it anymore. They just can't keep up anymore. I'm not going to keep my job if I keep stepping on your toes. And then you have the skills coach. You have one of the hardest jobs because you're trying to get this athlete stronger, more powerful, to throw faster, all these other skill attributes that a sport could take or need. But you got to listen to this guy way over here or these girls way over here who you don't even have a relationship with. We all have to work together, and we all have to understand we all have our own jobs. My job is to listen to these two guys, listen to this guy, and make sure that I don't overdo what I'm supposed to be doing. Parents, your job is most important because the athlete spends more time with you and around you and inside of your dwelling than they spend with any other coach. Athlete spends about 15 hours a week with me. An athlete spends about 1 to 4 hours a week with the skills coach. They spend about 15 hours with the sports coach. They spend probably less than that with these two guys here. When it comes down to the parents and the teachers, they spend about 50 hours a week with you. So with that athlete, if you're not giving them the proper nutrition, if you're not giving them the proper parameters that a parent should, so that the athlete can wake up in the morning and do the things that they have to do, think about having given the athlete a curfew. I don't care how old your kid is. I don't care if you have a 16-year-old kid. They should have a curfew if they want to play sports. If they have to wake up and be able to go to the gym. If you're not being that overwatch and saying, hey, I know your friends are out having fun. I'll give you until 9:30 tonight, 10 o'clock tops. But you have to be ready for bed because 8 hours is 8 hours. You got to get your sleep in. If you're not doing those things, you got to make sure that you're getting your viable nutrition in. You got to make sure you're getting your vegetables. You got to make sure that you're getting your carbs. You got to make sure that you're getting your protein for healing the muscles. If you're not taking advantage of your role as a parent, think diet, think nutrition, think diet, think homework, sleep, and even just making the home a safe place. If you're not protecting your kid in your own home or in the neighborhood, your kid will find other ways to do it somewhere else. Whether it be they go to a gang to do it, that means that they're out of the house a lot more often. Whether they go to a different coach or a different somebody else to do it, that means that they might not be getting the proper nutrition anymore. You know what I mean? They're leaving the house a lot more often because they don't want to be home. If you're not being there for the kid and giving them the love that they need and they want, and then also the security and care that they need and they want, you're not creating an environment for that kid to grow and prosper in. So therefore, I can tell you now, the kids who do the best in the program are the kids who can stick with it the longest. It's not the kid that's the best. It's not the kid with the great genetics. It's the kid who has the parents' genetics and the willpower to do all the things that they need to do as an athlete. And so when you have all of those things compounding together, D1 status off the top. I can I can almost look at an athlete and be like, okay, you got the height, you got the size, you got the education, you got the parents, you have the will, you're gonna go D1. But without those things in place, you're just knocking them down another notch. You know what I mean? If they don't have the will, they're definitely not going to make it. If they don't have the parent intervention and making sure that the parents not there giving them all the things that they need, they're definitely going to have a hard time. They still can make it, but they're going to have a hard time doing it. You know what I mean? So there's so many different things, and as a parent, you just need to make sure you're doing those things for the athlete so that they can so that when they go to their sports coach, they're not tired. They're not irritable. They're fed. They don't have to worry about doing their homework when they come home at night because you had them do it before they even came to practice. All of those things compound up into a great athlete. And without doing that, without focusing on that, you're going to turn your kid into somebody that's either going to struggle being a great athlete or they're going to be what's the word I'm looking for, or they're going to be cut out of the program that they desire to be in.
I'm glad you brought up sleep because they're just it's so underrated as an athlete or just a human being. When we sleep at night, it gives our bodies just the ability to repair itself. But I was reading something the other day as far as cognitive functioning. A
Hmm.
person who is lacking sleep, they're not performing at peak level, their cognitive functioning. they are, we have a tendency to be a little bit more triggered or agitated when we don't sleep. We start looking at things differently. We don't interpret information coming in the same way as if we got the proper amount of sleep. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. So you have this holistic approach, but the main thing you'd mentioned is making sure that you are taking responsibility of what your role is in this system, because nowadays athletes have three, four, five, six different people that they may be seeing. And if we are not staying in our lane and making sure that we are fulfilling the duties of why that athlete came to us, then the whole system is affected in some way or another. And
Mhm.
so, I know we're a little bit pressed on time. I want to make sure that we get over to um, talking about the good news on your end. I know a few weeks ago we were talking about the new gym
Yeah.
that you'll be opening, where you'll be training athletes in general fitness. So, tell us a little bit about that journey. How are things going, and what's the vision for the business?
Yeah. So the vision is I want to create a space where athletes, adults, even people dealing with disabilities and disadvantaged folks, I want them to be able to have a space where they can go to not only and again, I'm that holistic mindset individual. I don't think that you fix fitness with fitness. I think that you fix fitness with the mindset of fitness. I completely understand that habits rule all. Humans are going to do what humans want to do. Humans choose the path of least resistance. And that's why people gain weight so fast, because there's so much more that you can. It's so much easier to stop by Starbucks and get your coffee than it is to just make it on your own when you're at home. It's so much easier to stop and grab a bite to eat from the restaurant that's between you and your job, or between home and your job, than it is to make that meal at home. Okay. Sorry, I was talking to my daughter. So there's not really much incentive for people to go the extra mile of being fit and healthy. And so what my job is that what the job that I chose to tackle is trying to fix and adjust habits to where people can conveniently get what they want and be healthy in the process. And so what that looks like is first the gym. So the gym is my strength training gym. I train youth athletes to professional athletes. I train adults for who are dealing with and even athletes who are dealing with injuries, upwards to even think disability. I've got clients who are disabled. I got clients who are just fresh out of surgery. I've got clients who are completely healthy and do like Ironmans and all these other stuff. I think they're a little bit nuts, but that's okay. But no. But I work with all these individuals in the strength training world. But ultimately, what I want the vision to be is that when you come to my gym, not only are you next door to a gym, but you're also next door to the physical therapist. You're also next door to a healthy foods location. You're also next door to a restaurant that has healthy foods. You're also next door to maybe a sleep apnea place. I'm thinking about all the things that you can possibly need when it comes to health, and I want to put it all in one underneath one roof or underneath one parking lot. And if we can do something like that to where as many people, no, whether you want a strength train or not, you can still come to the physical therapist. Whether you want a strength train or not, you can still go eat healthy foods. Not only so, I'm not only trying to reach out to people who just want one aspect of that world. I want the people who are actually looking for all of it to be able to go to one stop, because it takes an hour just to get the workout done. And that's probably the hardest thing that people deal with, is that they're only going to choose a gym that's close to home. They're only going to choose a gym that's close to the job. They're only going to go to the gym if it's in between that pathway. If it's not, hey, I got to go 15 minutes the other way. today is not the day. I just got yelled at by
Right.
my boss. I just got, you know what I mean? Like I didn't eat right. I'm gonna go. But then if we eliminate all of those excuses and we create a habit loop that is convenient enough and more not only convenient enough but more convenient than Starbucks, more convenient. I don't mean to throw corporations names out there, but more convenient than the restaurants that are feeding unhealthy food items, more convenient than the sugary places that you can possibly go to, that where you're getting all this sugar from and all these unhealthy things creating these unhealthy habits. If we can make the physical fitness and health habit loop a lot more sturdy and a lot more convenient for people, then we can create a more healthier environment for not only for ourselves but for our family, and not only for our family but for our neighbors. And then that just trickles down the list, down the line to all of the people that we work with. The best part about my training that I can say is that uh, now I've been doing this for a long time, and not all the time has it been my facility. This is now my facility, but most of the time when I'm working with somebody, we're trying to get the entire family in. And a lot of the times we can get the entire family in. When you're working with youth athletes and general population adults, you can get the whole family into the mix. They'll do it together a lot more often if you give them the opportunity. But then if I give them the opportunity to go to a healthy food store, grocery store, if I also give them the opportunity to see the physical therapist while they're in the same facility, if I give them the opportunity to go to the restaurant right next door that has a healthy food items and has great healthy food items, if I put all of this stuff into one spot in one place, I really do trust and feel that it will change the way that people treat the location that I put my gym in, to not a place that I gotta go to or a place that I'm paying to go to, but to a place that I want to go to. I want to go there. My kid wants to go there. There's a skate park in the back of it. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
just things like that. I want to create a holistic facility where you can almost do anything, and I need a lot more people to help me do it. But I want to be able to create something like that to where you can do almost anything that you want to do, activity wise and health wise. And if you're that person, if you're that family, then you're going to enjoy it. If you're not that person and you're not that family, just come and visit us and we'll show you the way. But that's the way, that's what I want out of my training facility and all the other endeavors that I dive into from here on out.
I love it. Is there's this holistic approach, and I think a lot of times, when we even in the mental health space, we talk about, you can tackle mental health, but then there's also that physical element of things. So what you put in your body has a direct effect on your mental health.
Yep.
How you treat your body, how you exercise has a direct effect on your health and mental well-being. And so by you creating this space and opportunity, just that holistic approach where it's not we're putting a band-aid on one piece of the puzzle and hoping the rest of it works, because it
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. You have to address all of these things to be in a positive space mentally, physically, and spiritually. When do the doors open to the new gym?
So the doors open. So we'll have a small opening September, around September 4th. It depends on how long it takes me to get all the stuff in and get the paint done. But somewhere second week of September is where I for sure will be opening the doors for clients and opening all the training open. But October 1st is going to, or yeah, October 1st I believe, or October 2nd is the Monday, is going to be our grand opening day. And again, I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to do it on the Sunday, which is the first is on a Sunday, or if I want to do it on the Monday, the second of the month on the Monday. I'm leaning more so towards the first, just because it's a Sunday. More people can come around and come hang out with us. It's not going to be a day that I plan on training a lot, but it's definitely going to be a day that I want to celebrate and have people come in. So that way Monday comes and all of the celebration is out the door and we can get right into work. You know what I mean? Monday
Hmm.
is going to be that day that we open up the doors and we get right to work. But yeah, so October is going to be the grand opening date. September is going to be the little soft opening time frame when I'm just going to be bringing in the people who already been working with me for the years that they have been, and we're just going to keep the vibe going from the facility that I'm in now to the new facility, which is called Mount Olympus Training LLC. So Mount Olympus Training. If you don't know, get involved. MTOtraining.com. That's MTOtraining.com.
Love it. Love it. And I'm looking forward to seeing the growth and seeing the impact that you have within your community. And it's always, always good to see us men of color,
Yeah,
having our own businesses and trying to put out good and trying to create a a lane to where others that are coming behind us have these opportunities to do the same as well. So I appreciate all the hard work that you're putting in. The final question that I have for you: in today's hyper competitive world, young athletes are bombarded with all sorts of pressures and distractions. What advice would you give to a parent or a fellow coach who's trying to create a supportive environment that allows these kids to thrive both as athletes and well rounded individuals?
fix yourself first. Do some
Mm,
study, do some research on yourself, figure out who you are as an individual, not who you think you are, but who you actually are. The Myers-Briggs test is one thing that really hit home for me. If you haven't heard about the Myers-Briggs test, the Myers-Briggs test is basically a series of questions that they ask you. Some of these questions are very deep questions. Some of them are very surface level questions, but they ask you different questions about yourself and how you would respond to this situation. How do you respond to that situation? Uh, I took that test and I realized the type of personality type that I am, whether or not I was an introvert or extrovert. So you might be surprised who you are. You might be an introvert outside, but you might be an extrovert inside your household. So that just means that you're comfortable with the people who you call friends and family, but you're not comfortable with the people who you don't know. And so that kind of that type of personality type dictates the things that you do outside the house and inside the house. So the same thing goes for all of the other archetypes that you might read about. The more you read about yourself and learn about yourself, the more you can start to understand how people see you. And when you can understand how people see you, you can dial it back or put into them. When you notice that somebody is disturbed by your response to something, if you really care about that person and you really want to help them out, you dial it back a little bit because you see the disgust, you see the fear, you see you know what I mean? You see those things. And I think people who don't see those things never really get a chance and the opportunity to fix that relationship with that person. So imagine a guy that's yelling at his girlfriend, and his girlfriend might have been dealing with some might have in her past dealt with an abusive boyfriend. 3 weeks in the relationship, you might not know this, and all of a sudden she does something that you don't like and you're barking at her and pointing at her. First of all, that's not the right response that any man should have. But if that's the response that you're having and you notice that you have that, maybe in your past, that's how you saw your father dealing with your mother. And the cycle just continues. So you have to be able to see that and notice that when you are doing those things, and when you see that fear, you hope, whoa, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I'm just frustrated. And then you start to use your words a lot more because now not only do you see yourself, but you also can articulate the response that you're trying to get across. And so when you can start to read on yourself and learn yourself and deep dive in, learn about everything that you can about yourself. If there's a part of yourself that's dark, read dark books and figure out why you feel that way or you think about that way. Me particularly, I'm not a very sympathetic or empathetic individual. When I see people struggling, a lot my first initial response is I worked my butt off to be in the shape that I am in for years, decades, for you to say that you can't get off your butt and do X, Y, and Z, that used to trigger me. I had to read that about myself and learn that about myself and stop myself from feeling that way, because not that I still don't think about that way being proper, but that person didn't live my experiences. That person might have not been put in sports at that very young age. They don't know my background. They don't know. They think it's genetics. It's not. I know for sure it's not, because my parents don't look like me. So if you're that personality, if they're even noticing that personality coming out of you, you have to be able to stop and pull yourself back and draw back and change the way that you reach that person. Because if you don't, you'll never reach them. And so my response to anybody that's dealing with anybody that's not them, trying to coach them, trying to improve them, that person, whatever you think that improving looks like, read yourself, know yourself first, so that when you approach that person, you can give them the best you, and then they'll start to follow whatever it is that you need them to follow. If you are that person, if you're not that person, get them to somebody who is.
I love everything that you just said there, and I'll add on that. And
Mhm.
I have got a little bit of a bias on this one, but taking the time, whether you're a coach, parent, or athlete, finding a good therapist. Now, again, I'm coming from the space of marriage and family therapy where we deal with folks that have depression, anxiety, addiction, come from troubled backgrounds and households, and the beauty of going to therapy to also learn about yourself, and adding to what you said, Lawrence, reading what kind of books can help you dig deeper into who you are as a human being. I think it is a holistic approach, because just going to therapy alone isn't going to solve everything. There's also things that you have to do as an individual to do extra work to figure out who you are as a person. So, everything that you just said there, I agree with it. And I would also encourage people to think about therapy. And the last piece I'll add to that is therapy doesn't mean that you are, people say, oh, you're crazy because you go to therapy, there's a problem with you. No, you can literally go to therapy just for maintenance of just, hey, this is going on in my life, just want to talk to somebody about it. That, sometimes your friends aren't able to help you talk through that, or family, or even your partner or spouse. So I'll leave that there. Lawrence, Coach Lawrence Harden, I thank you for, jumping on here and having this conversation today, because I think it's important for us to continue having conversations about mental health, especially with athletes, and going to giving parents and coaches tools and resources that help them help their athletes. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this, and we want to see people succeed, whether you're an athlete or you're just a regular human being. We want to see everybody succeed. We want to see everybody flourish and thrive. And so by doing so, we have to have these conversations and coming together and talking about how can we help an athlete? How can we help an individual? How can we help a family navigate these uh, foggy waters of athletics sometimes? And so again, I thank you for everything you're doing. I appreciate the motivation and drive that you're putting into opening up your new gym, and I'm excited to see the growth of everything that you're doing in 2023. So, with that being said, where can people find you on social media? And if anybody has questions, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so if anybody has questions, you can definitely reach me out on social media. I'm mostly active on Instagram, which is my personal Instagram that I use a lot more often is posted by underscore law, LAW. So the first part of my name, posted by underscore law on Instagram. And my business profile is MTO Training, just like the website, mtotraining.com. It's MTO Training for my Instagram on my social media. I'm not very active on Facebook. I'll tell you that now. If I see a Facebook message, I'll probably just look at it in 3 weeks. But Instagram is for sure one thing that I'm mostly active on. And so, if you have any questions, any thoughts, or you just want to reach out and just kind of like give me a story or tell me a little bit about yourself, I would love to be able to speak with people. I love networking with people, and I love working with other coaches in the area. That's probably the biggest thing that I focus on mostly, especially at this level of training, is that I want to work with other coaches. I want to work with other parents who are dealing with multiple kids in their respective sport or their respective classroom setting. I want to work with people to to build a network of professionals who can impact the world. Like I said, I got this entire big plan back here. You see it right here behind me. I got this large plan behind me that I'm just checking the boxes off. Each thing that I do, I'm just checking the boxes off as I go. So whoever I can meet inside of the boxes of these plans, I want to work with you. I want you to be able to help me out, and I want you to be able to help your community out a lot more often as well. So those are the places that you can reach me on. Again, Instagram, posted by underscore law, MTO training, at MTO training, and then mtotraining.com is where you can mostly reach me at, where I'll be at.
Lawrence, I appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the conversation. For those listening on Spotify or Apple, be sure to like and subscribe to Coats in Conversation. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. What was the best part of this episode? Do you have questions? Is there more conversation that you would like to hear centered around mental health, specifically with athletes? Again, I appreciate you tuning in today's episode of Coats in Conversation, and be sure to be on the lookout for more episodes coming in the future.